Welcome to ETHDam, to ETHDam, to ETHDam, to ETHDam, to ETHDam.
Okay, hello everyone. Before we start the talk, my name is Victor, this is Leo. In case you haven't noticed, we're actually brothers, and we also work at Starkware. And the goal of today's talk is to explain to you how Starknet is going to scale both. It is scaling Ethereum, but also it's going to scale at the same time Bitcoin. And so to give you a representation of how we're going to do this, we have some hats so that you don't forget who is scaling what.
Oh, thank you. Testing.
Okay, you're going to be Bitcoin today.
So I have a Bitcoin hat, and Victor is going to be wearing an ETH hat.
All right. And then we also have like two hats here, which is Starknet's next gen prover, but this is for later. So I'm going to hide this over here for now. But yeah, the goal of today's talk is to explain to you why we want to scale both Ethereum and Bitcoin, and a high level overview of the design choices for dual settlement on both Ethereum and Bitcoin. So why do we want to scale Bitcoin? Bitcoin, as of now, is the most used blockchain out there. It's next to Ethereum. It has the highest level of assets on chain, but it's not really usable at the moment. That's just because it's purposefully built such that it's highly secure, but in a way, this turns the chain into a network that is difficult to use, that is oftentimes very expensive, oftentimes very slow. And the goal with us, Starknet, a layer 2, settling both on Ethereum and on Bitcoin, scaling both networks through one network, is to give access to DeFi to 1 billion users. So let's go straight into the questions, because there's a lot of tribalism between Ethereum and Bitcoin and other chains. So Starknet is trying to unify these two chains, or settle on both. And we're going to answer a bunch of questions today to why is this good for Bitcoiners and Ethereans. And who is like a hardcore Bitcoiner here? We have Talib from Citrea. Okay, I guess everyone else is here for Ethereum.
Who's a Ethereum maxi?
Okay.
All right.
We have one Bitcoin maxi and 2 ETH maxis. Guys, careful, things might heat up. But yeah, this is Satoshi's white paper. The goal is to have a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, and we don't have this today. This is not possible to have this a UX-friendly and cheap way of doing peer-to-peer transactions on Bitcoin today.
It exists, but it's difficult to scale.
Yes, and you have solutions like Cashew, but Cashew is very centralized, which allows you to do Bitcoin payments. You also have the Lightning Network, which allows you to pay with Bitcoin, but these are alternatives, and we want to have payments directly on the Bitcoin L1. So this is good because of scale. Now, Starknet is a layer 2 scaling solution. It scales Ethereum. If you look at Bitcoin's max TPS, it's always 8.5, and you cannot really bring an international a chain that is supposed to support network state attacks at 8.5 TPS. You cannot do that. And Starknet is a network on top of Ethereum, and we've noticed at the latest highest TPS, 992 transactions per second.
If you're just talking about a payment system alone, yeah, it's difficult to do on 8.5 TPS.
Yes. I say things and my brother does the TLDR. Okay, this is also good in terms of cost. Bitcoin is very expensive, and it's also very varying. So it's not predictable if we're going to go from 1.4 to, again, 20.6 next week. But Starknet is very predictable, and it's also very cheap. You see transactions on Starknet that settles at the moment on Ethereum at $0.001 dollars. So it's extremely cheap, and it's also extremely predictable, which is what you need if you want to create a DeFi project, or if you want to bring on institutions that need to know how much they're going to spend on transactions when they're using Web3 or when they're using DeFi.
You can take the same principles that we have for rollups on Ethereum. and basically unlock massive computation at a very, very low and predictable cost that settles natively on the Bitcoin network.
This is also good for UX. I was saying earlier that doing transactions directly on the L1 is totally possible. I'm sure we've all done it, but it's really slow and it's very expensive oftentimes. It's unpredictable. So it's good for UX. Starknet has great UX. It's this layer 2 that basically does off-chain computation but takes care of the UX for users. This is an example of a really successful DeFi project on Starknet, which is called Avenue. It's a DEX aggregator, and Avenue has built-in paymasters, so sponsored transactions. Users don't really have to pay for their transactions, oftentimes don't know that they're paying gas fees. And it's also another cool feature is the DCA order that it has integrated, and you can just DCA into it, and you won't. The UX is super smooth. It's not clunky at all. And so Starknet is this layer that takes the computation off-chain. It takes care of doing transactions off-chain. And all it does is post a proof to Ethereum that whatever happened off-chain is ZK correct, is mathematically correct.
And on a bit of a higher level, once you have a layer that is able to natively settle to the underlying Bitcoin network in a trustless or trust minimized way, then you unlock a level of programmability that you didn't have before, and with that also comes things like social logins, wallet recovery, all the sort of things that would let you engage with the network in a more friendly way that was harder to do before.
Yeah, this is a feature that we have natively on Starknet, which is account abstraction. You can program your user's UX. If you want your user to see a 0x wallet during their UX, you can just program that out. It's possible today. We have an app called Focus Tree, which is a consumer app. It allows you to you said, hey, I'm going to focus for 30 minutes, and then you get an NFT for the time that you focus. Really super basic application, but it's onboarding 200,000 users in the last 2 weeks on Starknet. And the wallet is completely abstracted, and the fees are, and the transactions are also sponsored, thanks to Avenue.
So that also means you could have a ton of users in the future using apps that are secured by Bitcoin without them even knowing that they're using the underlying Bitcoin network.
Yeah, and that's the ultimate goal. We don't want to give out gibberish to people about, hey, this is Web3 stuff. Like, no, there's no Web2 or Web3. This is just consumer applications, but with a Web3 background or backend. This is also good for utility. So if you can have access via Starknet to Bitcoin's liquidity, you can stake your Bitcoin, you can trade it, you can lend and borrow it. Now, for the Ethereum maxis over there, why is this good for you guys? Because now you have access to a much broader pool of liquidity, and you can actually tap yourself into the Bitcoin liquidity and have DeFi applications that tap into this liquidity. But you also keep the custody of your assets that are on Ethereum. So by being an L2 on both Ethereum and Bitcoin, you don't have to switch networks. Everything happens on one L2, and you can start tapping into the Bitcoin liquidity.
And I think an interesting point as well is there are bridges, right, between both L1s that exist. But I think this could be the first, or at least we hope this could be the first version of the two networks properly talking with each other, and in a way sort of sharing and verifying state.
Highly secure as well. That's the slide. That's the... So why Starknet? Why us? This is the track record that we have at Starkware. So Starkware is a company. It's a lab. We build infrastructure for Ethereum. We've built a proof system called the Stark Proof. It's been invented by the CEO Eli Ben Sasson, and we have a pretty strong track record. First of all, we say we are going to do things. We said we're going to scale Ethereum with ZK, and everyone told us we were crazy. Oh, you cannot write circuits. It's way too expensive. It's way too slow. Everything's going to break. But no, we're the cheapest ZK rollup on Ethereum today. So this is our track record. We invented the Stark proof system. We brought it to production grade. We built the first L2 rollup, which is StarkX, which is more of a SaaS. So it wasn't it isn't permissionless. Starknet is permissionless. Anyone in this room can build on Starknet. We have proof aggregation. Starknet went mainnet in end of 2021. We came out with recursive proving, with Circle Starks, which is this other way of doing cryptography with Starks, which is really efficient, which is also what allows us to verify Stark proofs on Bitcoin. We were the first L2 with L2 staking, and we will be the Bitcoin L2 that has Stark verification on the L1.
So Starkware has a history of saying things that sound weird and strange and crazy, and then actually doing them, and then they become mainstream in the way that other people also end up doing it and totally normal. So I think the takeaway is, if we say that, you know, there is a way to scale Bitcoin natively and to eventually have you know, a rollup that scales multiple underlying L1s at the same time, it sounds weird and strange today, and there are many problems and questions, but there's a high chance that it ends up being the future.
Yeah,
and that's what we're building towards.
There are big brains at Starkware, and they're working on this right now. So the big question is, how do you do dual settlement? How does one layer, Starknet, settle on both Ethereum and Bitcoin? And now we're going to enter the end of this presentation, which is a high-level overview of how we plan to do this, the design choices that we have thought about, and that we also will publish very soon on how we will settle on both. But this is just a high-level overview, and I think it's also the first time we do this publicly, where we tell people the design choices. But bear in mind, this is high-level overview. We are not cryptographers or core engineers working on Stark proofs and ZK. So if you want to learn more about this, do get in touch with us, and we will point you in touch with the engineers working on this. So the goal is to bring 1 billion users on-chain. That's the goal. What? This is... Wait.
We missed a slide on dual settlement.
Okay, yeah. This is...
There you go.
So how does it work? This is Starknet. Starknet produces blocks. Blocks represent Starknet state. And then we have Bitcoin and Ethereum as L1, as settlement layers.
Before we get into this, there's a couple of ingredients that you need for this to work. And these are, so you need a way to, basically, so a couple of things. First, you need a light client on Starknet that, for Bitcoin, that is able to basically tell Starknet what the state of Bitcoin is. You need the same on the Ethereum side. And then you need a way on Bitcoin to verify ZK proofs in a trust minimized or at least trustless way. And there are various ways of getting there, and Tali from Sizaret can tell you more about it. But yeah, those are sort of the core ingredients. If you have those, then what we're about to say can work.
Yes. And Bitcoin Light Client, we have this today. It's a Light Client written in Cairo. Cairo is a native language to build things on Starknet. Cairo is a language, anything you write in Cairo gets compressed and can be very easily verified and very cheaply as well. Anything you write in Cairo is Stark proven. In comparison to Noir, we had Pedro earlier. Noir is also Rust-based, but it's for privacy. So anything you write in Noir will be private. And so I had like this analogy the other day on Twitter. Noir is the Rust of privacy, and Cairo is the Rust of scalability. And you can use Noir on Starknet, but this is another conversation. Okay, so we just produced a state on Bitcoin. Now we're going to post the state on both the L1s.
Sorry, we produced a state on Starknet.
Yeah, Starknet, sorry.
Created a proof of that, and then sent the proof to both of the L1s, right? And so now the state of Starknet on both L1s is pending.
Whoop.
I think stuff is changing, but
oh yeah, we moved to state 2, but state 1 is still pending on both L1s. Afterwards, our Ethereum Lite client is going to notify Starknet that the Stark proof has been verified on the L1. And now, if we want to have dual settlement, we need also the Stark proof on Bitcoin to be verified. So we consider these states as pending. And once both L1s agree on the state, this is considered final squared. So now the Lite client told Starknet, hey, the Stark proof was verified on Ethereum, and then the Bitcoin Lite client is Bitcoin is also going to verify the Stark proof, and it's going to say, hey, Starknet, the Stark proof was verified on Bitcoin. And then once there is verification on both L1s, we have a final state for both. Okay, what about reorgs? This is the last slide as well. So, reorgs.
What about reorgs? So reorgs are basically they're the elephant in the room, which is, okay, if there is a reorg, then what do? What happens? Well, there are a couple of edge cases, and we're happy to dive deeper into them. Come up to us later and talk to us, and we're happy to discuss them. But the TLDR, there are a couple of edge cases. Some of them are fine and they can be fixed, and others of them are more difficult to deal with. But the important thing to note, if we go back to this previous slide, is that in the happy flow, both of these states agree, and this is all good. And so the question is, okay, what happens if either Bitcoin or Ethereum reorgs? And like I said, there are a couple ways to fix this, but the important thing I think to take home is that these states will so they can match, right? But they will also always exist independently. So there will always be a state of Starknet on Bitcoin and a state of Starknet on Ethereum. And so if something happens where these two states no longer matched and they cannot actually be reconciled, they will always continue to live on each of the L1s independently. So funds will not be lost in that sense. You will always be able to withdraw back to the individual L1s. There are a couple edge cases again, and we're happy to talk about them. But what's important to know is that think of these as two planes, and you're building a bridge between two planes that are also, by the way, flying at different speeds. But if that bridge breaks for whatever reason, because of a reorg and an edge case, for example, and they cannot be reconciled, then both planes continue to keep flying, and Starknet continues to work and continues to post proofs to both of these L1s, but you would have a sort of separation of state on Starknet itself. Anyway, couple of edge cases, like I mentioned, happy to talk about them in Q&A. But that would be addressing the reorg edge case. What's also important to know is that the fact that these two states exist independently is important if you are a maxi. So if you're an Ethereum maxi or a Bitcoin maxi, and you're like, I don't actually want my Bitcoin to touch any Ethereum state, then that needs to be possible. And so that's why these exist independently, and you connect them.
Yes. The design is ready. So if you want to talk to us and learn more about it, we can do it after this presentation. So this is the end of the presentation for today. We hope you enjoyed what we presented for you today. And yeah, we'll catch you anywhere in the venue. We're here also tomorrow if you have any questions. Also, Leo does BD, and I do ecosystem. So he works with big teams, I work with smaller teams, and my goal is to help you find a Cairo job or help you build your first project on Starknet.
Thank you.